Hello, Captain Blind. Welcome in. Hello, Renee. Welcome to Twisted Tales Live. I am your host, Bryn Morgan. I am also a horror author, and tonight I am sharing my work, Crimson Queen. It's wrapping up. War is coming. Are you ready? Is Ella ready? Tonight you will find out. Beautiful videos today. Thank you, everyone. Hello, White Channel. Hello, Kimmy. So, I was thinking about it. Of course, none of us were, born in this time. But back, many, many, many decades ago, people used to gather around their radios one night a week, and they would listen to a story. And for some reason, that came to me this afternoon when I was sitting there and I was writing. I was like, you know what, Britt? You're bringing back something that is old fashioned and something that pulls family together. And that is what is pulling the Night Dwellers together, are these stories. And I am so glad that you have embraced them. And I want to thank everyone so much. People used to just sit around the radio and they used to listen to a story, so at least you get a visual. Oh, thank you, Palm. Oh, do you really, Sandy? Exactly. We're the dark side of the Waltons. Hello, Sky Creeper. Do you like dark fiction? Do you like dark romance? Do you like vampires, witches, warlocks, werewolves? Then follow. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss another Twisted Tales Live. And welcome. Since I started writing my own novels, I haven't picked up a book in years. I'm too busy writing them. 1 minute. That would be beautiful, Melanie. Hello, the Rose. How are you doing? Right. Hello, Martha Reagan. Welcome in. Speak it into existence. One day, Blood on the Snow and Crimson Queen will be movies at the theater. And The Haunting of Hastings House. And Cherry Hill. Okay, now you've got me started, Melanie. No, I do believe that life and death are in the power of the tongue. I truly, truly do. Yay! We'll let this one finish. Thank you, Palm. Thank you for the snow globe. That was lovely. Thank you, the rose. This is the first novel where I have written things that I've never written before. And one of my hesitancies was writing about war because I never did war. I never did a war scene. I never, did that. But just like everything else, I just kind of pictured in my mind what I wanted it to look like in Crimson Queen. And so everything that you are hearing tonight is, whew, intense. Welcome to the Night Realm. I am the Night Queen. You are my night dwellers. And tonight we continue our vampire story, the Crimson Queen. When we last left this story, things were heating up, things were getting intense, and Lucian, Aiden's son, has been born and fully intends to remove Ella Snow from her throne. What will happen tonight? We have a way of how we enter into story time here, don't we, Pink? Let's begin. Lower your lights. Lock your doors. Light a candle to chase those shadows away. Pull your curtains nice and tight. Wrap yourself in your warmest blanket to avoid the chills that are about to crawl up your spine. And let's begin. The dining hall glowed with the restored light of the crimson moon. The blood-red illumination flooding through the tall windows and painting everything in familiar, comfortable hues. 3 days of darkness had ended. The eclipse was over. And yet, something had changed. Lilibet could feel it in the air, thick and heavy, like the pressure before a storm. Something stirring, something building. She sat at the long table, a crystal glass of blood in her hand, watching Vlad and Oren discuss the implications with barely concealed excitement thumbing through her veins. Whatever caused that eclipse, cousin, Vlad was saying, cutting into his roasted meat with sharp, precise movements. It wasn't natural. It wasn't random. Someone or something did that deliberately. Oren swirled his wine thoughtfully, his expression serious. Agreed, cousin. That kind of power, it speaks of ancient magic, forces we thought were sealed away, contained. He took a sip, and Lilibet watched his throat work as he swallowed, heat pooling low in her belly. Something is indeed brewing on the horizon, Oren continued, his voice dropping slightly. I can feel it, a shift in the balance, a war coming. War. The word sent a thrill through Lilibet that she couldn't quite suppress. A smile tugged at the corners of her mouth, small, secret, hungry. War meant chaos. War meant opportunity. War meant Blackstone might finally fall. And oh, how she wanted to see that. Wanted to see Ella Snow brought to her knees. Wanted to see her brother Ian, the Dark Sun, the perfect warrior, cut down. Wanted to see her pathetic mother, Seraphina, cold, distant, disapproving, finally pay for all those years of making Lilibet feel small and worthless and wrong. She took a sip of her blood, savoring the taste on her tongue, imagining it was Ellis. Beside her, Oren continued speaking, his voice rich and thoughtful. If ancient powers are truly returning, cousin, if someone has found a way to channel that kind of magic, to blot out the crimson moon. His foot brushed against her ankle beneath the table, deliberate, intentional. Lilibet's breath hitched, heat flooding through her. She turned her head slightly to look at him and found his dark eyes already on her, a knowing glint in their depths even as he continued his conversation with Vlad. Then we may be facing a threat unlike anything the current kingdoms have encountered, a force that could reshape everything. His foot slid higher, pressing against her calf with gentle but insistent pressure. Lilibet's fingers tightened on the glass, desire pulling hot and liquid in her core. Gods, even now, even in the middle of a political discussion with her husband sitting right there, Oren can make her body sing with just a touch, just a look. Across the table, Vlad set down his fork, reaching for his wine. Then we need to prepare, he said. But his words were starting to blur slightly at the edges. We need to... Lilibet looked at him. Oren smiled at her. To decide if we'll do if... He blinked, hard, his eyes struggling to focus. If it comes to what, cousin? To war! Lilibet watched with growing anticipation as the sleeping spell took hold. She could see it happening, the way Vlad's movement slowed, the way his head began to drop, the way his words began to slur, the way his grip on his wine glass loosened. Almost there, she thought. Almost. She smiled, wider now, not bothering to hide it. "What did you say, husband?" she asked sweetly, her voice dripping with false concern. "You said something, but I couldn't quite hear you." Vlad tried to respond, his mouth opened, words forming. "Yes, we have to decide what we're going to do. If it comes to war." His eyes rolled back slightly. His head began to fall forward. And then, thunk. His forehead hit the table with a dull, final sound. His breathing immediately evened out into deep, rhythmic patterns of enchanted sleep. Silence fell in the dining hall. Lilibet and Oren sat perfectly still for a moment, listening, making sure the spell had fully taken hold. Then, Oren pushed back his chair with a soft scrape of wood against stone. Lilibet did the same, rising gracefully to her feet. They moved around the table toward each other, slowly, deliberately, like predators circling. When they met in the middle, Oren reached out and pulled her into his arms with a sudden, fierce intensity. His hand splayed across her back, one sliding up to tangle in her rich, raven hair, the other pressing her hips against his. "What are your thoughts at this moment?" he murmured against her ear, his breath hot against her skin. Lilibet tilted her head back to look at him, and her eyes blazed with dark satisfaction. "I hope," she said, her voice low and fervent, "that whatever eclipse the crimson moon is about to eclipse Ella Snow too." Her hands came up to frame his face, her long nails pressing slightly into his skin. He raised up her skirts. "I want to see her die, Oren. I want to see her suffer for what she's done to me. For banishing me to this place. For marrying me off like cattle to strengthen political alliances. For looking at me like I'm nothing. Like I'm worthless." Her voice rose with passion, with years of accumulated rage. "For everything she and my mother have subjected me to, and my brother. Every dismissal, every cold look. Ah!" He began to unbutton her dress. "Every moment they make me feel small." Oren's expression softened, one hand coming up to stroke her cheek tenderly. "If she had not done those things, my love," he said quietly, "if she had not sent you here, we would have never met." Lilibet paused, the fury in her eyes flickering. "That," he touched her thigh, she admitted slowly, "is true." A different kind of heat flooded through her then, not rage, but desire, gratitude, need. Oren's hands moved to the back of her dress again, finding the small buttons that ran down her spine. He began to unfasten them one by one, his fingers working with practiced ease. Then perhaps, he murmured, leaning down to press his lips against her shoulder, we should be grateful to her in a twisted way. The dress loosened as more buttons came free. For bringing you to me, my dog dove. He pushed the sleeves down over her shoulders, burying her pale skin in the crimson moonlight and her cleavage, for giving me the greatest gift I've ever received. His mouth on the curve of her neck, pressing hot, open-mouthed kisses against her pulse point. Lilibet's head fell back, a soft moan escaping her lips, her hair brushing the table. I still want to see her destroyed, Oren, she breathed, her hand sliding up into his hair, gripping tight. I know, Oren murmured against her skin, his teeth grazing her throat, his fangs. And you just might get what you wish. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes dark with desire and something deeper. Whatever caused that eclipse, Lilibet, whatever darkness is rising, it's powerful enough to challenge her, powerful enough to shake her throne. His hand slid down to grip her waist, pulling her flush against him as he lifted her to the table. And when the war comes, when the chaos descends, we'll be ready. We'll be watching, waiting for our moment. He kissed along her collarbone, making her shiver. And if the snow falls, if black stone crumbles to dust, we'll be there to claim what's left. Lilibet's breath came in short gasps, her body responding to his touch, even as her mind raced with dark possibilities. Promise me, she whispered desperately as he spread her legs. Promise me that I'll get to see it. Promise me I won't miss her destruction. Oren lifted his head, capturing her mouth in a fierce, claiming kiss. When he pulled back, his eyes burned with intensity. I promise, he said, his voice rough with passion and conviction. I will make sure you have a front row seat to Ella Snow's downfall. His hand slid lower, gripping her thighs and lifting her effortlessly around his waist. But right now, he growled, right now, I want to celebrate. I want to worship you. I want to show you exactly how much you mean to me. He carried her toward the wall, pressing her back against the cold stone, his body pinning hers, his mouth finding hers again in a kiss that was pure hunger. Lilibet wrapped her legs around his waist tighter, her arms around his neck, surrendering completely to the desire flooding between her. Yes, she gasped between kisses. Yes, Oren, please. And he thrust into her. They lost themselves in each other as passion consumed them both. Neither of them noticed the shadow that flickered in the doorway. As passion consumed them, Oren swallowed her cries. The servant who'd come to clear the table and had frozen at the sight before him. The witness who would carry this secret for now. Far to the north, in the depths of Velcrest, Lucian Blackstone lay in his cradle of Blackstone, his red eyes open and aware, despite being only a few days old. And he smiled, because he could feel it, the web of betrayal spreading, the seeds of chaos being sown. The fractures forming in alliances had seemed solid, perfect. When he rose, when he marched on Blackstone with Morwen's forces, he wouldn't just be taking Ella Snow's armies. He'd be facing a kingdom already tearing itself apart from within, already weakened by lies and ambition and forbidden desire, already broken. He could feel it, and it would make his vengeance all the sweeter. The war room of Blackstone Castle thrummed with controlled chaos. Maps spread across every surface, detailed renderings of the Thornspire Mountains, charts showing troop movements, supply lines marked in red. 500 warriors had been mobilized and sent north in waves over the past 3 days. Joining the forces Ian had already established around the hidden fortress. Seraphina stood near the window, her ancient face illuminated by the crimson moon's light, studying reports that had come in from the northern camps. Nera had returned temporarily to coordinate with the other magic users, preparing the complex rituals that would be needed to break through Velcrest's wards. Marcus, commander of the Blackstone's ground forces, stood at attention near the door, awaiting orders. And Queen Ella Snow paced back and forth across the stone floor, her boots making soft sounds against the ancient rock, her pale blonde hair red in the crimson light, pulled back in a severe braid that emphasized the sharp lines of her face. Her blue eyes, rimmed in red, were shadowed with exhaustion and something deeper, something that looked almost like loneliness. She had everything she needed for this war: troops, weapons, magic, strategy, everything except Your Majesty. Seraphina's voice broke through her thoughts. Ella stopped pacing, turning to face her mother. Yes, you've been circling this room for an altar, for an hour, daughter-in-law. What is it that you need? Ella opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, her jaw tightening. Why would you ask me that question? Because I can see it on your face. What did she need? Ella walked out onto the balcony and looked up at the crimson moon. She had never did well without him beside her. She needed him. She needed Ian, her husband, her partner, her anchor in the storm. He'd been in the north for over a week now, establishing camps, coordinating reconnaissance, maintaining watch over the fortress. And she'd been here, mobilizing forces, working with Marcus, making strategic decisions, playing the role of a commanding queen. But gods, she missed him. Missed his steady presence beside her, missed his quiet strength, missed the way he could calm her with just a look, just a touch. Missed falling asleep in his arms and waking to find him watching her with those dark silver eyes full of love and devotion and desire. She looked up at the crimson moon and then off to the north. I need Ian, she said quietly, the words escaping before she could stop them. Seraphina's expression softened slightly. What did you say? I need Ian. He's managing the northern forces, maintaining surveillance. He's exactly where he needs to be, my queen. I know that, Ella said, frustration creeping into her voice. I know, but She stopped, pressing her fingers to her template. Her temples ached with all the decisions. I need him here, with me. I need his counsel. I need his presence. She didn't finish, but Seraphina understood. The ancient vampire moved close, placing a gentle hand on Ella's shoulder. Then summon him, she said simply. You are a queen, after all. If you need your husband at your side, then call him home. Ella looked up at her mother-in-law, uncertainty flickering across her beautiful face. But the northern forces have more than enough leadership with the commanders you've sent, and Marcus will be there. Seraphina interrupted. Marcus can manage ground operations just as well as Ian can. Nera can coordinate magical assault, as Maelor. Ian has trained them well. You have a terrific force. They don't need him to hold their hands. She squeezed his shoulder. You need him. And there is no shame in that. A queen is still a woman. A warrior is still a wife. You don't have to carry this burden alone. Ella closed her eyes, breathing deeply, letting the permission sink in. Not that she needed Seraphina's position or her permission. After all, she was queen. She could call him home. She would call him home. Decision made. She turned. Marcus, she said, opening her eyes and turning to face the commander. He straightened immediately and bowed. Your Majesty. I need you to fly north. Find my husband. Tell him I'm requesting his immediate return to Blackstone. She paused, then added more firmly. And I know him. Tell him it's an order. She knew that Ian would bite. Marcus bowed. At once, Your Majesty. He departed swiftly, and Ella returned to the window, a small smile tugging at her lips, staring out at the crimson moon. Come home, she thought. Please. I need you by my side. Ian received the summons just after dawn, or what passed for dawn under the eternal crimson moon. He'd been reviewing patrol reports with one of his lieutenants when Marcus landed in the center of the camp, his expression urgent. My lord, Your Majesty. What is it, Marcus? The Queen requests your presence in Blackstone immediately. Ian's heart clenched. Is something wrong? Has something happened? No immediate threat, Marcus assured him with a sly smile. But Your Majesty was insistent. This is a direct order from the Queen. The men in the camp began to laugh. Ian looked at them and growled. He nodded slowly, his mind already racing through the implications. Ella wouldn't pull him from the field without good reason. She understood military necessity too well, which meant she needed him, not the commander, not the strategist. Him, her husband. Brief Lieutenant Kale on current operations, Ian said quickly, already moving toward his tent to gather essentials. He's to maintain surveillance patterns and report any changes immediately. No one approaches the fortress without direct authorization from the Queen. Do you understand? Yes, my lord. Understood, Marcus said. Within 15 minutes, Ian was airborne, flying south with Marcus at his side. The journey back to Blackstone took most of the night, hard flying with minimal rest stops. But Ian pushed himself harder than necessary, driven by something he couldn't quite name. A need that matched the one he'd heard in Marcus's voice when delivering the summons from his bride. She needed him, and he needed her too. Needed to see her face, hear her voice, hold her. The week in the north had been necessary but difficult, sleeping in cold camps, maintaining constant vigilance, being separated from the woman who'd become the center of his world. When Blackstone Castle finally came into view, the dark towers rising against the crimson sky, Ian felt something in his chest loosen. Home. He landed in the courtyard with barely controlled urgency, his boots hitting stone as he folded his wing. Guards stepped aside as he strode toward the main entrance, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Where is she? He demanded of the first servant he encountered. She's in her private chambers, Your Majesty. Ian didn't wait to hear the rest. He took the stairs to the royal wing at a near run. His heart pounding with something that had nothing to do with exertion and everything to do with anticipation. When he reached her door, he paused only long enough to knock once before pushing it open. And then he saw her. She never failed to make his breath catch. She never failed to make his blood boil. Ella stood at the window of her chambers, still in her clothes, leather pants and a loose white shirt, practical garment she wore when not required to maintain royal appearances. Her pale blonde hair hung loose down her back, catching the crimson light and making it appear almost silver. When she heard the door open, when she heard his voice call her name, she spun around. Ella. And the careful control she'd been maintaining for a week shattered. Ian. His name came out broken and desperate. And then she was moving, crossing the room in quick strides, and he was there, catching her as she collided with him, his arms wrapping around her with fierce strength. I'm here, he murmured against her hair, holding her tight. I'm here, my love. I'm here. Ella buried her face in his chest, breathing in his scent, leather and steel and something uniquely him, feeling tears prick her eyes despite her best efforts to hold them back. I needed you. I'm sorry, she whispered. I needed you here. I needed to be strong. I tried to manage everything alone, but Shh. Ian soothed, one hand sliding up to cradle the back of her head. You don't have to be strong alone. Not with me. Never with me. He pulled back just enough to cup her gorgeous face in his hands, tilting her head up so he could see her properly. Will you ever not be beautiful to me? Even exhausted, even with shadows under her eyes and tension written in every line of her body, She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. I missed you, he said quietly, his thumb stroking her cheeks. Every moment of every hour of every day. I missed you too, Ella breathed, her hands coming up to grip his wrist. So much. Too much. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't focus properly. Everything feels wrong without you here. Ian leaned down, pressing his forehead against hers the way he always had done. Then I won't leave again. Not unless you're by my side. But the Northern Forces have excellent commanders who know what they're doing, Ian interrupted. Marcus can coordinate with him. Kale is more than capable of maintaining surveillance. They don't need me breathing down their necks. His voice dropped to something rougher. But you need me. And that matters more than anything else, my queen. Ella's breath hitched, her fingers tightening on his wrist. Ian, he kissed her, not gently, not tentatively, but with all the pent-up longing and need and hunger that had been building to their weaker part. His mouth claimed hers with desperate intensity, one hand tangling in her pale blonde hair, the other sliding down to grip her waist and pull her flush against him. Ella moaned into the kiss, her arms wrapping around his neck, pressing herself closer. She could not get close enough to him, trying to eliminate even the smallest gap between their bodies. A week, just 1 week, but it had felt like an eternity. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ian rested his forehead against hers again. He began to back her toward the bed. I need you, he said roughly. I need to feel you. I need to be in you. I need to be with you in every way. Yes, Ella gasped, already tugging at the fastenings of his armor. Yes, please, Ian, I know, he murmured, helping her with the buckles and straps. I know, love. The armor fell away piece by piece, leather and steel clattering to the floor, forgotten and irrelevant. His shirt followed. She ran her hands over his chest. Then hers followed, hands roaming over newly exposed skin, relearning familiar territory, seeking comfort and connection and proof that they were together again. Ian backed her further toward the bed, his mouth never leaving hers, kissing her like a man starving, like she was air and water and everything necessary for survival. When the backs of their knees hit the mattress, Ella pulled him down with her, their bodies tangling together, skin against skin, heat and need and desperate love. I love you, she gasped between kisses. Gods, Ian, I love you so much. I love you too, he breathed against her throat, his hands sliding down her sides, mapping the curves of her naked body like he was memorizing them all over again. More than anything, more than everything, he kissed along her collarbone, her shoulder, the sensitive spot below her ear that made her arch against him. You're my queen, he murmured, my wife, my everything. Ella's hand slid into his dark hair, gripping tight, pulling him closer. Then be with me, she whispered. All of you. Right now, I need to feel you. I need to know that you are real, that you're here. Always, Ian promised, rising up to look down at her, his silver eyes burning with love and desire and absolute devotion. I'm always here, Ella, for as long as you want me. Forever, she breathed, as he leaned down and kissed her belly and lowered his mouth to where she began to moan. She breathed, reaching up to frame his face in her hands. Forever isn't long enough. And as they came together, as passion and need and love consumed them both, the world outside faded away. The war faded away. The fortress faded away. The darkness rising faded away. All of it became distant and unimportant compared to this moment, this connection, this love that had sustained them through countless trials and would sustain them for whatever came next. She moaned. His moan matched hers as they found fulfillment in each other's arms. Later, much later, they lay tangled together in the sheets, Ella's head resting on Ian's chest, his arms wrapped securely around her, their breathing slowly returning to normal. "I'm selfish," she murmured against his chest. "I'm selfish because I want you with me, always. Don't leave me again," she whispered into the quiet. "Please, promise." Ian's arms tightened around her. He remembered their first kiss against the rocks at Blackstone. He remembered the first time he made love to her. He remembered the hatred in her eyes when he turned her. And here she was, in his arms, and he had never loved anything so fiercely as the woman on top of him. "I promise," he murmured, pressing a kiss to the top of her pale blonde head. "From now on, I remain here. Whatever we face it together, my queen." "Together," Ella echoed, closing her eyes, and finally feeling the tension that had been coiled in her chest for a week begin to unwind. He was home. He was here. And together they would face whatever darkness waited in those mountains. Together, they would win. Deep within Velcrest, in chambers that descended far below the mountain's roots, Morwen stood at the edge of a vast chasm that plunged into darkness so absolute it seemed to swallow light itself. The air here was cold, and the natural cold of mountain depths, but something else, something wrong. A cold that seeped into bones and froze the soul, that whispered of places beyond death, beyond life, beyond the veil that separated worlds. She raised her arms, her serpent hair writhing and hissing with anticipation, her green eyes blazing with power that had been building for centuries. "Dulcara, Nathis von Thara," she began, her voice echoing off unseen walls. The words themselves seemed to twist reality around them. "Rise from shadow, rise from death, rise from the places between." The darkness below stirred, not moving exactly, but responding, awakening. Morwen's smile was terrible and beautiful all at once. This was the moment she'd been planning for since her imprisonment. "Dulcara, Nethys von Thera." Since the first queens had dared to seal her away, thinking they could contain power as old as the world itself. Fools. Seals could be weakened. Prisons could crack. And she had been patient. So very, very patient, for centuries, waiting for the right vessel, the right circumstances, the right moment. And now, with Lucian born, with Ella's forces gathering outside her fortress, with the perfect storm of vengeance and war converging, now was the time. From bone and ash, she continued, her voice rising, from shadow and nightmare, from the memories of slaughter and the echoes of ancient battlefields, I call you forth. She slashed her palm with a blade of obsidian, letting her blood drip into the chasm below. Each drop felt like a stone into still water, sending ripples of green light cascading down into the depths. And the darkness answered. Shapes began to form in the void below, slowly at first, just hints of movement, suggestions of form, but growing stronger with each passing moment, more solid, more real. 10 centuries you have slept. Morwen called down into the depths. 10 centuries since the queens cast you into shadow. But remember, I remember what we were, what we are. Her blood continued to fall, each drop feeding the growing shapes below. Warriors of the first dark, soldiers of the age of shadows, children of nightmare and violence and glorious, beautiful death. The shapes were talking, taking clearer form now, humanoid, but wrong, too tall, too angular, moving in ways that defied natural joint movement. Rise! Morwen commanded, her voice cracking like thunder. Rise and serve me! Rise and destroy! And they rose. The first one climbed from the chasm like something birthed from nightmare and darkness itself. It was tall, 7 feet at least, its body wrapped in armor that seemed to be made of solidified shadow, black as the void between stars, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Its face was hidden behind a helm carved with runes that hurt to look at directly, but through the eye slits green fire burned with cold intelligence. In its hands it carried a sword, massive, cruel, etched with the same painful runes as its armor. It hauled itself onto the stone floor of the chamber and stood, water from some underground river dropping from its form, turning to steam as it hit the ground. And then it knelt, head bowed before Morwen in absolute obeisance. Good, she purred, moving closer to run her fingers along the edge of his helm. Very good. You remember your purpose. You remember who commands you. The creature made no sound, didn't move except for the slow rising and falling of its chest. Waiting, obedient. Rise, Morwen commanded. Stand with your brothers. The shadow warrior stood and moved to the side of the chamber, taking up a position against the wall, perfectly still, perfectly patient, and from the chasm below, another climbed up. Then another. Then 3 more. Then a dozen. Then 100. Then another 100. Then another 100. Then another 100. Morwen watched them come with growing satisfaction. Her heart, if it could still be called that, swelling with dark pride. They were magnificent, exactly as she remembered them all those centuries ago. Warriors forged in the age of shadows, before the vampire queens had risen to power, before the current kingdoms had been established. Created through dark rituals and forbidden magic, given form and purpose through blood sacrifice and ancient oaths. They had served her once, millennia ago, had fought for her in the wars against the first queens, had died by the hundreds, the thousands, as the queen's forces slowly pushed back the darkness. And when Morwenth had finally been sold away, the surviving shadow warriors had been cast in the void with her, trapped in the spaces between worlds, suspended in a sleep that was neither death nor life. But she had remembered them, had kept their essence close, had planned for this moment when she could call them back. 1,000 warriors climbed from that chasm the first hour. 100 creatures, then 500, then 1,000. Each one carrying weapons designed for maximum destruction. Each one bound to Morwenth's will through oaths older than memory. They assembled in perfect formation. 10 rows of 10, starting with inhuman stillness, waiting for commands that might never come, content to wait for eternity if necessary. Morwenth walked among them, expecting them like a general reviewing troops, her satisfaction growing with each step. "You are the vanguard," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "The first wave. The shock troops that will break Ella Snow's forces before they ever understand what they're facing." She paused in the center of the formation, turning slowly to take them all in. "But you are not enough. Not for what I had planned. Not for the statement I intend to make." She raised her arms again, her voice rising to fill the vast space. "Continue. Rise. All of you. Every warrior who fell in my service. Every soldier who died fighting the queens. Every soul I claimed and bound and kept. Rise." The chasm below began to glow brighter, green light pulsing like a heartbeat, and more came. So many more. They climbed up in waves now, organized, methodical, efficient. Shadow warriors emerging from the depths in groups of hundreds, thousands, each one identical in their terrible perfection, each one armed and armored and ready for war. Morwenth stood on a raised platform she conjured from stone, watching her army assemble with cold satisfaction. 5,000. The chamber was vast, a natural cavern that stretched for hundreds of yards in every direction. But even it was beginning to feel crowded as more and more warriors took their positions. Each new soldier taking their place in formation with mechanical precision, creating ranks that stretched back into the shadows, an army that seemed to have no end. Beautiful. Morwenth breathed and laughed, her eyes tracking the movements below. Absolutely beautiful. She had forgotten how magnificent they were, how perfect. These were not mindless zombies shambling forward to be cut down. No, these were intelligent, animated corpses held together by a necromantic thread. These were warriors, thinking, planning, remembering. Each one of them had been a soldier in life, a vampire, a witch, a human, or something else entirely, who had pledged themselves in darkness in exchange for power. And in death they had been perfected, given bodies that wouldn't tire, strength that wouldn't fade, loyalty that couldn't waver. 5,000. Morwen descended from her platform, moving among the assembled ranks, studying faces hidden behind identical helms, admiring weapons that ranged from massive swords to cruel spears and warhammers that could shatter stone. You remember the vampire queens, she said, her voice carrying through the chambers. You remember how they fought, how they moved, how they thought. She paused, letting the words sink in. Their knowledge is your advantage. They have forgotten you, forgotten what you were capable of. They think you're myth, legend, stories told to frighten children. Her smile was sharp as broken glass, but they're about to find out that you are real, and you are mine. And you will remind them what it means to face the armies of the First Dark. 5,000. The formation now stretched the entire length of the chambers, row upon rows of shadow warriors standing in perfect military precision. And still, they continued to rise from the chasm. When the 6,000th warrior climbed from the chasm and took its place in formation, Morwen felt something click into place in her chest. A sense of completion, of rightness. 6,000, a full legion. Exactly as it had been in the Age of Shadows, when her armies had numbered in the tens of thousands, and they would again. When she'd command forces that made the current vampire kingdoms look like children playing at war. This was just a fraction of what she'd once possessed, but it would be enough, more than enough. Halt, she commanded, her voice ringing through the chamber. The flow from the chasm stopped immediately. The last warrior took its position, and then silence. 6,000 shadow warriors standing perfectly still, awaiting orders. Morwen stood before them, taking in the full scope of what she'd created, what she'd reclaimed. You are the First Legion, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. Reformed, reborn, returned to serve the cause you died for millennia ago. She began to pace along the front rank, her serpent hair coiling and writhing with barely contained excitement. Outside these walls, Ella Snow gathers her forces. 600 warriors to my 6,000. The full might of Blackstone. She thinks she comes to arrest one woman, Kalitza Veyron, who is dead. Ha! To rescue an innocent child. To uphold justice. She laughed, cold and cruel. Oh, Ella Snow, you have no idea what awaits you. No concept of what you're truly facing. Morwen stopped at the center of the formation, raising her arms. I'll let her make the first move in this game of chess. Let her bring her 600 warriors. When I give the command, when the time is right, you will march. You will pour forth from the fortress like a tide of darkness, and you will destroy everything in your path. She lowered her arms, her green eyes ticking. Ella Snow's forces will break against you like waves against stone. Her warriors will fall. Her magic will fail. Her precious kingdom will crumble to the ground. Her voice dropped to something softer but no less deadly. When she stands alone, when she watches everything she's built turn to ash, when she fully understands the magnitude of her failure. Morwen's smile was terrible. That's when I will introduce her to Lucian. That's when she will meet the son of the man she unalived. That's when she will understand that justice, true justice, is finally being served. The shadow warriors remain motionless, but something in the atmosphere seemed to shift. An anticipation, a hunger. Wait, Morwenth commanded. Wait for my signal. She's about to make her first move. She turned to look toward the distant ceiling, toward the surface far above, where Ella's forces were even now preparing their assault. And when she does, we will show her no mercy. Come, Ella. Make your first move. As one, the 6,000 warriors struck their right fist against their chest. A sound like thunder that shook the very foundations of the mountain. A salute, an oath, a promise. Morwenth closed her eyes, savoring the moment. Everything was falling perfectly into place. Everything she'd planned for, everything she'd waited for. Soon, very soon. Let's stop there. Let's take a 10-minute intermission. And when we come back, Crimson Queen will continue. Everybody good? So glad you're enjoying it. Hello, Raybab. Hey, Leslie Marine. Thank you. I'm getting worried, Perilla. X, 600 to 6,000. Yeah. Thank you for the go popular. Thank you for the presents tonight. Thank you for tapping. Thank you for the repost. Thank you for sharing the live. Let's keep it going. Hello, Mystic. Trying to do some tappity tap tap taps before I start reading again. Hey, over there in White Channel. Don't forget, tomorrow night is the third and final night of case number 5 on Paranormal Files Live of the Perrin Haunting. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for the repost, Amy. Thank you so much. Rhonda, thank you for sharing the live. One minute. You should have saw me today when I would have an idea about what I wanted, and there's this one part that's getting ready to come up, and I was just like, oh, I got like cold chills. Oh, I got like major cold chills. That happens a lot. Let's let everybody come back in that was in to come back in. I am repeating a lot of the same words tonight. Bryn, I'm stroking out over here. Uh-oh. What, from the passion and love scenes? Y'all got two, like literally almost back to back. Lilibet and Oren, and Ian and Ella. Thank you, Ray Vav. Thank you. All right. We are back. Magic Moon! Hello, darling. That and the suspense? Good. Welcome back to Twisted Tales Live. I'm about to continue the reading of Crimson Queen. Hope you're feeling better. Morwenth left the Legion standing in formation and made her way back up through the fortress, climbing stairs that spiraled upward from what seemed like miles. When she finally reached the tower chamber where she'd established Lucian's nursery, she found him awake and watching the door with those unsettling red eyes. He'd grown again. In just the hours since she last checked on him, he'd aged. Perhaps another month. He appeared to be 6 or 7 months old now, sitting up on his own, his dark hair thick and lustrous, his features already showing the sharp beauty of his mother and father. I felt them, his voice said in her mind as she approached. Below, rising, an army. Yes, Lucian, Morwenth confirmed, reaching down to lift him from the cradle. One war will destroy them all. 10,000 shadows will come forward. 6,000 currently. The First Legion reformed. She carried him to the window, holding him so he could see out over the hidden valley. For me? He asked. For us, Morwenth corrected. For our vengeance, for our victory. She adjusted him in her arms, studying his face. You're growing so quickly, my boy. So beautifully. Soon you'll be strong enough to walk, to speak aloud, to wield the power burning inside of you. How long? Morwenth considered. Days. Perhaps a week. Your growth is accelerating even beyond what I expected. The magic I poured into you, the blood you consumed from your mother, the purpose driving you, it's all combining to push you forward at an impossible rate. She smiled down at him. By the time Ella's forces breach our outer darkness, and they will, eventually you will be almost ready. You'll be able to stand before her as a man by the time we penetrate Blackstone. Her smile widened. Soon you will be able enough to speak, to accuse, to make her understand exactly who you are and what she took from you. Lucian's small hand reached up to touch her face, his red eyes never leaving hers. And in her mind she heard him say, and then I will destroy her. Not a question, a statement of fact. Yes, Morwenth agreed. Then you will destroy her, slowly, painfully, while her forces watch. And I have the perfect place for her ending. While her kingdom crumbles, while everything she has built turns to dust, I have the perfect place. She pressed a kiss to his forehead. You are my masterpiece, Lucian Blackstone, my perfect instrument of vengeance. And when you claim your birthright, when you take your father's place as heir to the Blackstone line, the world will tremble. Father would be proud. The words were soft, almost wistful. Morwenth's expression hardened slightly. Your father, yes. Your mother was a beautiful fool who didn't understand what she'd been given, what she carried. She served her purpose, but she was never worthy of you. She carried him back to the cradle, laying him down gently. He was getting heavier, even as she did. I am your mother now. I who shaped you. Do not mention Kalitza Veyron to me again. It was I who gave you purpose. She only gave you a place to grow. It is I who will guide you to glory. Lucian stared up at her, those red eyes unblinking. Of course, Mother. Morwen stroked his soft hair one more time, then turned to leave. She had preparations to make, defenses to strengthen, final touches to add before Ella's forces began their assault. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to go according to plan, exactly. And far below, in the vast chamber where one shadow started, 6,000 stood in perfect formation. The army waited, patient, silent, ready. Dawn broke over the Thornspire Mountains. Or what passed for dawn under the crimson moon. A subtle shift in the quality of blood-red light that painted the peaks in shades of wine and rust. The forward command post thrummed with controlled energy. As 600 warriors took their final positions around the valley, their formations precise, their weapons ready, their faces set with grim determination. Marcus stood near the vanguard with Nira at his side, studying the shimmering veil that had hid Velcrest from view. His second in command, Maelor Vane, stood just behind them, his blue eyes, scanning the terrain with the practiced gaze of a warrior who'd survived countless battles. Maelor and Nira had been together for nearly 2 years now, a fact that had initially caused some raised eyebrows among the nobility, given that Nira was a witch and Maelor was a vampire. Nira was one of the Queen's most trusted witches, and Maelor was a career soldier. But their bond had proven itself through trial after trial, and now no one questioned it. The mages are ready, Nira said quietly, her deep green eyes glowing faintly with the magic she'd been building past hour. We can begin on your command. We wait for the Queen. Nothing is to happen without the Queen, Kale said. Marcus nodded, then looked back at the assembled forces. 600 of Blackstone's finest arranged in careful formations that had been drilled and practiced for weeks. Wait! I see something approaching from the south. Everyone turned. It was a guard. He landed in the middle of the camp. Commander, the word from the Queen. Attack. Thank the gods. Finally! On my signal, he said. Break the veil. Let's see what we're dealing with. Nira stepped forward with her circle of 6 companion witches, their hands raising in unison as they began to chant in the old tongue. Green light bloomed in the center of their formation, growing brighter with each syllable, pulsing with accumulated power. And then, with a gesture from Nira, the light shot forward like an arrow, streaking across the valley toward the shimmering barrier. When it struck, the impact was visible even from a distance. The veil rippled, sparked, fought back. But Nira and her mages didn't relent, pouring more power into the assault, their voices rising, sweat beginning to bead on their foreheads from the effort. The veil rippled again, began to thin, started to tear. It's working, Maelor murmured, his hand instinctively moving to the hilt of his sword. We'll be killing them soon. And then the veil didn't just fall, it dissolved. All at once, like mist burned away by sudden fire, the magical barrier simply ceased to exist. The fortress stood revealed in all its terrible glory. 7 towers of black stone rising from the mountain, covered in glowing runes that pulsed with sickly green light, windows like empty eyes staring down at them. For a moment, nothing happened. The fortress stood silent, waiting. And then the gates began to open, slowly, deliberately, with the grinding sound of stone against stone that echoed across the valley like distant thunder. Marcus's hand tightened on his sword hilt. "Defense positions," he commanded, his voice carrying across the assembled warriors. "Shields ready. Stand firm." The gates opened wider, revealing a terrible darkness beyond. And then, movement. Figures emerging from the shadows, stepping out onto the bridge that spanned the chasm. Humanoid figures, tall, perhaps 7 feet, wrapped in armor that seemed to be made of solidified shadows, black as the void between stars. They moved in perfect formation, their footsteps creating a steady rhythm. Thud, 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 thud. "How many does it appear to be?" Marcus asked quietly. Neera's eyes glowed brighter as she counted. 300, she said. "Maybe 350. They're still coming out, but Marcus, we have them outnumbered. 600 against 350. We can take them and obliterate them." Maelor stepped forward, his expression grim but confident. "Agreed. We have superior numbers, better positioning, and the element of surprise since they just opened their gates for us." He looked at Marcus. "We can do this." Marcus studied the advancing formation. Organized, disciplined, but ultimately just 300 or 400 soldiers against his 600. The math was on their side. "Archers!" he called out. "Prepare volley! Ground forces! Advance to engagement range! Flyers! Assemble!" The Blackstone warriors moved forward with practiced precision, shields locked, weapons ready. The Shadow warriors continued their steady march down the bridge, now perhaps 200 yards away and closing. "Loose!" Marcus commanded. Hundreds of arrows streaked through the air, blessed by Seraphina herself, tipped with silver, carrying every advantage Blackstone's forces could muster. They struck their targets with precision. Chest, throat, face, and did nothing. The arrows simply passed through the Shadow warriors as if they were made of smoke, emerging from the other side without causing any visible damage. "Arthur," Marcus breathed. "Try again!" Maelor shouted. "Volley 2!" Another wave of arrows flew. Same result. No damage, no effect, nothing. The Shadow warriors continued their advance, now only 100 yards away, their silence somehow more terrifying than any battle cry. "Ground forces!" Marcus bellowed, recovering from his shock. "Engage!" The front line of Blackstone warriors surged forward to meet the Shadow army, shields raised, weapons ready. The two forces collided with sound like thunder, and everything went wrong. The Shadow warriors' weapons, massive swords, cruel spears, war hammers that seemed to defy natural physics, tore through Blackstone shields like they were made of paper, tore through armor like it was cloth, tore through bodies like they were nothing at all. The screaming started immediately. Warriors cut down where they stood, their blood spraying across stone, their cries of pain and terror filling the air. "Hold the line!" Marcus roared, launching himself into the fray. "Ariel, combat!" His sword connected with the nearest Shadow Warrior's armor and bounced off. No scratch, no dent, nothing. The flyers began to attack and were thrown aside like flies. The creature's response was immediate and brutal. Its sword came down in a devastating arc that Marcus barely dodged, the blade passing close enough that he felt the wind of its passage. He tried again, aiming for gaps in the armor, for joints, for anything that might be vulnerable. His blade slid into the gap between helm and chest plate, and the Shadow Warrior grabbed his sword with its bare hand, grabbed it like steel was as harmless as air. Then it yanked, tearing the weapon from Marcus's grip and tossing it aside like trash. Marcus stumbled backward, horror and realization flooding through him. We can't breach them. Around him, the battle had divided and devolved into chaos as Blackstone's warriors discovered the same terrible truth. Their weapons were useless. Their magic did nothing. They were being slaughtered one by one. But they still had the numbers. 350 Shadow Warriors against 600. They could still overwhelm through sheer force of... And then the gates opened wider. More Shadow Warriors poured out. Another 100. Then 200 more. Then hundreds more. Then thousands. They kept coming and coming and coming. An endless tide of darkness flowing from the fortress, joining their brothers on the battlefield, adding their weapons to the massacre. Maelor's eyes widened. Gods preserve us. He breathed, standing back to back with Nira, as Shadow Warriors pressed in from all sides. How many of them are there? Too many! Nira screamed, her magic flaring as she tried spell with spell. Fire, ice, lightning, pure force, nothing worked. The Shadow Warriors walked through her magic like it didn't exist, their weapons never stopping, never slowing, cutting down warrior after warrior with mechanical precision. 500, 600, 700 Shadow Warriors now filled the battlefield, and thousands more on the way, and still more came. Marcus fought his way through the chaos toward Nira and Maelor, his heart breaking with every fallen warrior that he passed. We need to retreat, he bellowed. We can't, Maelor shouted back, pointing at the Shadow Warriors who'd circled around behind them, cutting off escape routes. They've surrounded us. It was true. The Shadow Army had herded Blackstone's forces into tighter and tighter clusters, eliminating any possibility of organized retreat. Warriors fought desperately, valiantly, with everything they had, and they died. One after another after another. Blood painted the Stone Valley floor in spreading pools. Bodies fell in growing heaps. The screaming never stopped. 800 Shadow Warriors, 900, 1,000, 2,000. The gates finally stopped disgorging more soldiers, but it didn't matter. 1,000 Shadow Warriors, 2,000, 3,000 against what was left of Blackstone forces. Maybe 200 still standing, maybe less. The math had become a nightmare. Aerial units! Marcus' voice cracked with desperation and grief. Retreat! Retreat! Escape now! Maelor grabbed Nira's arm. We have to go. Now! You need to create a spell. Perhaps I can create an invisibility spell That will at least get us off this mountain to where we can get back to Blackstone. She called her mages together. They began to chant. We can't leave the dead, Nira sobbed, her face streaked with tears and blood. They're already dead. More was falling. Now was probably no more than 100 or below. Maelor roared, physically lifting her off her feet. If we don't warn the kingdom, everyone will die, Nira. The mages continued to work on the spell. Retreat! Everyone retreat! The soldiers were falling like flies. He launched into the air, pulling Nira with him. Marcus, Kale, the combined magic of the mages giving them speed, invisibility, and height. Below them, other warriors followed, those who could still fly, those who weren't already wounded or surrounded. The ground troops had all died. Perhaps 60 managed to break free of the melee. Perhaps 50 made it into the air before shadow warriors cut them down. Perhaps 45 actually escaped. The shadow warriors let them go, didn't pursue, simply returned their attention to the warriors still trapped on the ground, methodically finishing what they'd started. Marcus flew beside Maelor and Nira, his heart shattering with every scream that reached his ear from below. I'm a failure. I'm going back. No, you are staying with us, Maelor shouted. But I am their captain. I am their commander. No, you are staying with us. Marcus looked down. I'm sorry, he whispered to the warriors he was leaving behind. I'm so sorry. But there was nothing else to do, nothing else to be done. They flew south toward Blackstone, carrying the news of the worst military disaster in the kingdom's history. Deep within Velcrest, Morwen stood before her basin of dark water, watching the massacre with cold satisfaction. Beautiful, she murmured, her green eyes glowing with pleasure. Absolutely beautiful. She watched Blackstone's forces break and flee, watched the survivors scatter like leaves before a storm, watched the invisibility spell and could have broke it, but decided to let the 45 return to Blackstone to warn the Queen. Watched her shadow warriors stand victorious over a field of corpses. Perfect. Everything had gone exactly as planned, better than planned. She'd expected the Vampire Queen to send forces, much more than what she had. She'd expected them to try breaking through her wards. She'd even expected them to put up a decent fight. But this complete and utter rout, this was beyond her best hopes. They'll run back to their castle now, she said to her empty chamber. They'll huddle behind their walls and pray for salvation. They'll send out desperate calls to aid that no one will answer. She waved her hand over the basin, and the image shifted to show Ella's face. The Queen didn't know yet. Was still in Blackstone with her dearly beloved Ian, still waiting for news. And when the survivors arrive, Ella Snow, Morwen continued, her smile widening, when they tell you what happened, when she realizes the magnitude of her failure, she laughed cold and cruel. That's when the true despair sets in. A sound from behind made Morwen turn. Footsteps, small, uncertain, coming down the stone stairs that led to her tower chamber below. She smiled, already knowing what she would see. The footsteps grew closer, and then a child appeared in the doorway. Not an infant, not a baby, barely able to sit up, but a child. Perhaps 5 years old in appearance, with dark hair that fell in soft waves around a face of heartbreaking beauty. He wore simple clothes that Morwen had conjured for him, black pants and a white shirt that made his pale skin seem to glow in the green light. His eyes were the same burning blackish red they'd been since birth. But now they had even more awareness, even more intelligence. Lucien, Morwen breathed, moving toward him with something almost like maternal pride. Look at you. Just a bit ago, you were an infant, and now, a strong boy. Lucien Blackstone stood in the doorway, watching her with those unsettling eyes. When he spoke, his voice was clear and strong, far more articulate than any 5-year-old should be. I felt them, Mother, he said, outside, fighting, dying. He took a step forward, his movement still slightly uncertain, his body growing faster than his coordination could quite keep up with. Your soldiers killed them. Yes, Morwen confirmed, kneeling so she was at his eye level. My shadow warriors destroyed the Vampire Queen's army, just as I promised that they would. Lucien's expression was difficult to read, something between satisfaction and hunger. How many? Over 500 dead. 600, excuse me. Perhaps 45 have escaped to carry word back to Blackstone. She reached out to stroke his soft hair. I'm sure they know by now, or will. They know they can't fight us with conventional forces. They know their weapons are useless. They know they're helpless. Lucien's small hand came up to touch her face, a gesture that should have been sweet, innocent, but somehow felt wrong coming from eyes that old. When do we march? He asked. When do I get to face her? Soon, Morwen promised. You're growing so quickly, my beautiful boy. At this rate, you will be 10 years old within a few days, old enough to walk steadily, to speak with authority, to will the power burning inside you properly. She pushed him into an embrace, and when you're ready, we will march on Blackstone. We'll bring our army to their gates, and we'll show Ella Snow exactly what she created when she murdered your father, Aiden. Lucien pulled back to look at her, and his smile was terrible on such a young face. I want to see her face when she learns who I am, he said softly. I want to watch her realize what she's done. And you will, Morwen assured him. I promise you, my boy, you will have your moment, your confrontation, your vengeance. She stood, taking his small hand in hers. But for now, you need to feed. You need to rest. You need to let your body continue growing. to let the power inside you mature. I will have some of the shadow gods to drag some of our defeated inside for you. She led him back toward the stairs. Come, rest. Soon you will see the army that fights in your name. The 10,000 warriors who will help you claim your birthright. And as they climbed the stairs together, the ancient witch and the impossibly fast-growing child, Morwen allowed herself a moment of pure, dark joy. Everything was falling into place. Everything that she'd worked for, everything she planned for. Soon, very soon. The flight back to Blackstone took 2 days of desperate, exhausting travel. 45 survivors flying south with grief and honor weighing them down more than any physical burden. When the towers of Blackstone Castle finally came into view on the morning of the 3rd day, Marcus felt something break inside his chest. Home, but at what cost? They landed in the courtyard to immediate chaos, servants and guards rushing forward, shocked by the condition of the returning warriors. Blood-soaked, injured, broken. 45 survivors out of 600. The math was incomprehensible. "Get the healers!" someone was shouting. "Get the queen and the king!" Marcus stood in the center of the courtyard, still gripping his sword despite having lost its original weapon in the battle, and felt the full weight of what had happened crashing down on him. He'd failed. Led 600 warriors to slaughter. Come home with only 45. Maelor and Nira stood beside him. Maelor had his arm wrapped around Nira's shaking shoulders as she sobbed against his chest. And then everything grew quiet. "Marcus!" He turned to find Ella rushing across the courtyard, Ian close behind her, both of them dressed quickly, their faces pale with dread. One look at his expression, at the faces of the survivors, told Ella everything she needed to know. "No," she breathed. "No, Marcus. Where are..." She looked up toward the sky, expecting to see the shadows flying across the crimson moon. "Where is everyone?" He couldn't speak. "I said, where is everyone?" Marcus fell to the ground in the snow. "They are dead, Your Majesty," Marcus said, his voice hollow and broken. "They're all dead." An hour later, Ella stood in her war room, staring at the map of the Northern Territories, while Marcus, Maelor, and Nira gave their full report. Ian stood beside her, feeling guilty. What if he had been there? It might have been different. He had one hand on her shoulder, offering her silent support, but inwardly feeling massive guilt. Seraphina had arrived within minutes of being summoned, her ancient face grave. "It was shadow warriors," Marcus was saying, his voice flat with shock. "At first we thought maybe there were 300 or 400. We had the numbers. We thought no one. We thought we could take them." He paused, swallowing hard. And then Maelor spoke. But then more came out, and more, and more. They just kept coming until there were 1,000 of them. Then nearer, and more, Ella. Thousands of them. Endless, beyond number. Marcus looked at Ella and his eyes were haunted. Our weapons couldn't touch them, Your Majesty. Arrows passed right through. Swords bounced off their armor like we were hitting solid stone. My magic did nothing, Nira said. They walked through our forces like we weren't even there. Like we were nothing. Ella's hands gripped the edge of the table so hard, her knuckles went white. Casualties? Marcus's voice cracked. Your Majesty, there's 45 survivors and most of them are injured. And they're only the flyers. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Ian's hand tightened on Ellen's shoulder, and she reached up to grip it, drawing strength from his presence because she was about to faint. And Kalitsa? She asked quietly. Any sign of her with the Shadow Warriors? No one responded. And Kalitsa Veyron! Was she there? Maelor responded. None, Your Majesty. We saw no sign of her. Just the fortress. And those things. Nira stepped forward, her face still streaked with tears. Maelor's hand firmly collapsed in hers. Your Majesty, those warriors, they're not natural. They're not even undead in the traditional sense. They were not formed by Kalitsa. There's something else. Something ancient formed them. Something we have no counter for. She looked at Seraphina. Ella's voice was small. You know what they are, don't you? I saw it in your face when Marcus first mentioned them. Seraphina nodded slowly. Yes, I do. They are shadow warriors, creatures of the age of shadow, forged by Morwenth herself through dark rituals. They were supposed to be extinct, destroyed when the first queen sealed the darkness away. She moved to stand beside the map. Only Morwenth could form this army. Thousands of them. It means she's regained far more power than we feared. This isn't just about Kalitsa anymore. This is about an ancient evil returning to claim the world it once ruled. Ella closed her eyes, fighting against the wave of despair and nausea threatening to drown her. Her soldiers were gone. Dead because she'd sent them north. Dead because she hadn't understood what they were facing. Dead because she'd failed them. There was no point in sending more, because the same thing would happen. Damn it! Ella yelled, and her fist pounded the table. Your Majesty. She opened her eyes to find Seraphina watching her with an expression of deep concern. What? It's over. Not yet, Seraphina said. What do you mean? Do you remember when I mentioned someone equal to Morwenth's power? Ella raised her head higher. Yes. Yes, I do. There is hope, the ancient vampire said quietly. One chance, one possibility. Ella straightened, desperate for anything that might help. Tell me. Seraphina pulled down an ancient tome from her shelves. A white leather, gold thread, pages yellowed with A's. Her name is Alira, she said softly, opening the book. The name hung in the air like a prayer. Who is she? She demanded. Seraphina walked away from the group. They stared after her as she walked to the window and stood. She was Morwenth's equal in the Age of Shadows. Where Morwenth commanded darkness and death, Alira wielded light and life. They were the two sides of the same ancient power. Seraphina traced illustrations on the windows, the stained glass, showing two figures, one wrapped in shadow, one glowing with radiance. Continue. When the first queens rose up against the darkness, it was Alira who stood with them. It was her magic, combined with theirs, that finally sealed Morwenth away. Hope flickered in Ella's chest. Then we find her. We bring her here. It's not that simple, Seraphina erupted gently. After the sealing, Nira took over. After the sealing, Alira disappeared. She was the mother of witches. It's been 1,000 years since anyone has seen or heard from her. Most believe that she has been unalived. What? Seraphina looked directly at Ella. But I don't. I believe that if Morwenth could return, then perhaps Alira can too. And I believe I can try to find her. Understanding dawned on Ella's face. Where is she? Ella looked between Seraphina and Nira. I don't know. There is a place. I need to search for her. Because, Your Majesty, we have no other options. We cannot fight shadow warriors with conventional weapons. We can't defend this kingdom against forces that we cannot hurt. She placed both hands on Ella's shoulders. Ian stepped forward. I will go with you. No, my son. You will stay here. The journey to find her, if she even exists, it will be treacherous. If she can be found and convinced to help, then we have a chance. Light against darkness, life against death, balance against corruption. Ella felt tears threaten but forced them back. Do you really think that you can find her? I don't know, Seraphina admitted. Nira, move forward. I can go with her. No. I will go by myself. Ella needs you by her side, Nira. I will try. Because the alternative to watching Morwen march south and destroy everything. Ella grabbed her mother-in-law's hands. Then go. With my blessing. She said, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. Please find her. Bring her back. Because you're right. She's our only hope now. Seraphina pulled Ella into a tight embrace. I will try, she promised. Or I will die trying. I will try for you. I will try for my son. I will try for my children. I will not abandon our kingdom. When they pulled apart, Seraphina's expression had hardened with resolve. I will leave tonight. I will search the old places, the ruins, the battlefields, anywhere that Alira might have left traces. Nira spoke up. I will not go with you, but I will be with you with my light. Perhaps I can help you that way. How long will you be gone? Ella asked. I don't know. Days. She moved toward the door, then paused. Ella, fortify the castle as best as you can. Recall all outlying forces, every man, every vampire, to fight. Gather every able warrior. Her voice dropped. Because if I can't find Alira, Morwen will march on Blackstone. And she will destroy us all. Ella nodded, her jaws set with determination. We'll be ready. Seraphina smiled, sad but proud, and left. Ella stood with Ian, Marcus, Maelor, and Nira, surrounded by maps and impossible choices. What do we do now? Marcus asked quietly. Ella straightened, still entering her voice. We prepare for war. We fortify every wall, train every able body, and make sure that when Morwen comes, when, not if, that we're ready. She looked at all of them. And may the gods protect Seraphina as she searches for Alira. And please be alive. We are Blackstone, and we do not bow. And far to the north in Velcrest, Morwen stood with Lucian, watching the crimson moon. He was larger now. Soon, she whispered. Very soon. Lucian smiled, waiting, hungry for vengeance. And that is the ending of the Crimson Queen reading for tonight. Thank you. Karen, you're like, what? I told you it was going to be an adventure. You are welcome, Ken. Thank you. I'm telling you, the whole time that I've been writing this, I have just been exhausted. So next Thursday night, the continuance of The Crimson Queen. Will Seraphina find Alira? Will Ella Snow be able to conquer Morwenth and her shadow gods? No, Marcus is the child. Marcus is the commander of Ella's forces. I think it was a beautiful night of reading. Marcus has returned to Blackstone devastated because he lost his army. You are welcome. You are most welcome. I love you all. Thank you for being here tonight for tonight's reading. Tomorrow night, PFL, we continue night 3. Good night, Shirley. Good night. Are you all right? You didn't have a stroke, did you? Thank you, Turtle Woman. Thank you. Tomorrow night, we continue the final night of case number 5, the Perrin haunting. Okay, good. Good night, Leslie Marie. All right, I'm going to let everybody go and process everything they heard tonight. Pink says, I know Ella will win. We're getting so close. Thank you, Melanie. Good night, Goddess Lovely. Good night, good night, good night. Good night. Love you all. Loving your bits. It is Elazal they are looking for. Oh. Team Ella. Good night, everyone. I'll see you tomorrow night on PFO. Bye.